police presence versus cameras. I think cameras de-skill. I think cameras actually contribute to de-skilling drivers.
But this actually leads me quite neatly into the sort of like the next topic, which is to do with how policing deals with speeding. So a total change of direction in terms of what we're talking about.
You wrote something about that, didn't you? Hang on.
Yes. Say again another article. Say some strange guy keeps writing all these articles for a magazine, like he knows what he's talking about. Make it up as I go along, really. But yeah, I think one of the things that you touched on there is, about policing in the community, and it used to be back in the day that there were enough police officers who were known to their local community who could have the conversation, like you say, just drop it into the conversation in the pub that, I'm doing some observations over there, but because there's only one of me, you don't know where I'm going to be, so you know that I'm out doing it, but you don't know where, so that'll put you on your guard. That approach, I think, was effective, and I think when you look at sort of like the history of policing right the way back to the days of Peel, it was about it's the community. The police force are not separate from the community; they are part of the community, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when we translate that now into say the roads policing and the road safety aspect side of things. I'm interested to get your take. I'm of the view that camera enforcement for things like speeding, whilst I can believe that yes, it's effective in the locations where you've got a speed camera, I'm not convinced that it's the best approach to take. What's your take on it?
Yeah, it's a sort of a personal versus technical argument, isn't it?
Yes.
Police presence versus cameras. And there's not quite so new phenomenon, but it was when I was told about it a few years ago, that the dash cam informants, and the numbers. I used to represent MAG on a powered two-wheeler road safety group in Norfolk. That's the council have let that go now. That doesn't even exist, sadly. But I found myself sitting next to, it's like a multi-agency group, and I'm sitting next to a traffic sergeant who happened to be the motorcycle section supervisor for the County of Norfolk. And he also was a firearms team leader. So we're talking about multiple tasks. There wasn't a dedicated. Yeah, he was firearms team, police, motorcyclist. And he said, I've had to take one of my PCs, one of my constables, off of bikes, and have him permanently reviewing dash cam footage, because we're getting so much information from the public. They've bought their cameras and they're driving around, and they've seen someone do 50 yards worth of double white line and nearly cause an accident. They've got it on camera. So they've been onto the police. They're getting so many of these. He's had to take a police motorcyclist off the road to do it. I said, oh gosh, I said, how many of that has that left you with? And he said, oh, it's just me and 4 PCs now. I said, oh, whereabouts do you work? He said, that's for the county. And this is something that you said earlier. People don't appreciate, and unless they've got involved and worked, or not worked, but sort of consulted with police forces like you've done, you suddenly realise how staggeringly thin on the ground they are. So 1 sergeant and 4 constables for Norfolk. It was 5, but because of the public information, you need someone to review the dash cam. Perhaps they haven't found a support staff, euphemistically referred to as civvy staff. They haven't found a support staff to actually review those. Perhaps they have now. But that's taking a uniform patrol off of the road, just so there is that side of it. But yeah, it's a personal versus technical thing, and not only that, and I can quote from my last year in the job when I was on the traffic division. Myself and my fellow chief inspector, we were deputy heads of the traffic division, and we used to go and talk to the counties about sighting of cameras. I'll tell you right now, Jim Betley, my old Oppo, is a top class biker. He was a class one advanced. He's a BMW rider, and he's still riding. He's the same age as me. He's still riding. And he said to me, "I don't like cameras." He said, "I don't rate them." He said, "When we've got known accident problem spots where we're getting a lot of accidents, yes, it needs to be controlled somehow." He said, "But the stats that we're being given by the county council don't tell us the cause of the accident." So a lot of these cameras are being placed at, say, traffic light junctions. We would go to the one meeting that I went to with him. We sat down, and the county council road safety officer said, "Well, we got them at this junction because there's look at the stats. There's lots of crashes there." First thing Jim said, "Died in the wall traffic man, Jim, not me. I was a sort of newcomer." He said, "Yeah, which direction was this one coming from? Was the accident before the lights, at the junction, or just past the junction?" Well, it was at that junction. And Jim said, "Yeah." I repeat the question: was it going this way? Was it going that way? They couldn't tell us. So he said, "How can we support the putting of a camera there when you cannot drill down into the causation factors sufficiently for us, the police, to be able to do something meaningful?" That's
Yeah, and I think this is a problem, isn't it? Because effectively when you go down this route of the there's an element of like you say yes, okay, you've got an area where there's a large number of casualties. Say there's the fixation that every casualty must have been caused by speed, and therefore we need to set up a camera to do everybody for speeding. The problem is that then does a blind zero tolerance approach to speed in one particular location that doesn't take into account the circumstances at the time, doesn't have the ability of what a human police officer has to do to use discretion,
Yep.
to basically look at the entire set of circumstances and say, was that speed appropriate?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. At the extremes, yes, doing 100 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour is never going to be acceptable.
No.
But doing 35 in a 30 mile an hour at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's literally nobody else in the road, everybody's asleep in bed, there's not a single light on in any house, no pedestrians around, doing 35. Really, is it something that is going to be life or death situation that we need to effectively criminalise somebody for taking a view on it and say, well, I can get away with 35 in.
Yeah. Someone would have had to have seriously peed me off to get done for that. I mean, I was always of the opinion that if I saw something that this guy's going to go in the book, nothing that person could say other than perhaps a dire life emergency was going to stop me from reporting him. Some officers used to say, "Oh well, if they passed the attitude test, I wouldn't book them." If I decided I was going to caution someone, they could be as obnoxious to me as they liked. If that was my decision to caution them, they were going to get cautioned, and I would deal with the sarcasm and the abuse and what have you in a different way. But they would go away if So, but then we're all human. Someone starts to insult me or worse, my dog. Then it's going to put my back up and it possibly could sway my decision. I fought against that, but a camera doesn't do that, does it? I think cameras de-skill. I think cameras actually contribute to de-skilling drivers, and also the electronic controls that are being built into the vehicles, which people think are safety devices. Well, they might be, but they are de-skilling drivers, and we're not looking at the training capabilities of our driving instructors, or not the instructors, but the training regime. Is that doing enough to skill up drivers for the 21st century?
This again is something I think I can't remember if I put it in this particular article. Is that with speed limits, it always used to be the wisdom that a speed limit is a limit, not a target.
Exactly.
But what the road safety community have done, have turned it from a limit into a target, because they're actually trying to use it as a tool to make everybody drive slower.
Yep.
So they're saying, right, everybody's driving at 50 at the minute, let's put the speed limit down to 40 to make them all slow down. So it is literally becoming a target. The complete opposite
Yeah. Can I
of
give you
what the conventional wisdom was, that no, this is a limit.
exactly? I'll give you a very anecdote about that. A couple of years ago, one of our a friend of mine, local councillor actually, he was having a cup of tea in the afternoon, and literally just up the road from where I live, and crunch. He hears a squeal of brakes and a crunch as someone went through the hedge opposite his house. He goes out, and it's an 18-year-old lad in a Renault Clio on its side like that. The lad climbs out all shaken. There was a dumper truck coming the other way around this bend. It was not a 90-degree bend, but it was sort of like a 75, 80-degree bend. The chap took him into his kitchen, gave him a cup of tea, sat him down. As he calmed down, the lad said to him, and I quote, "I just don't get it. This road's a 60 limit. I was only doing 55." And my friend said to him, "Yeah, the road might be a 60 limit, but that's a 25 mile an hour bend." And this guy's, recently passed his test. Where is the skill? I know.
Yeah,
We all start driving with two bags, the lucky bag and the experience bag, and you try and top up the experience bag from the lucky bag before it runs out. That's the old adage that we used to have. But this guy genuinely thought, well, it's a 60 road, so I can do 60 on it. And there was the bend
yes,
where he had visibility that would allow him to stop if he was doing 30. So the
yeah.
7-ton dumper truck put him into the hedge.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it. I mean, fairly local to where I live, there's sort of like a village with, you come out of the village and you get the national speed limit sign, and it's literally 50 yards before a hairpin bend. And you think, yeah, the problem is kids these days are going to look at that national speed limit, and by the time they reach the hairpin bend, they will be doing 60.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And this is a skill thing. This is technology trying to compensate for, or it's not even compensating. It's de-skilling,
Yeah,
because all of
yeah,
these things are there. There's one thing that motorcycling does do. If you don't pick up skills and stick to them and develop them as a motorcyclist, you're going to last long.
hmm yeah,
But these sort of the technical devices, the anti this, I sound like an old crud now, I know, but they don't they don't always help. ABS is great, but
yeah.
mine's cut in once in 20 years or 30 years. Before that, I didn't have any.
Yeah, well, that's it. I say, in my previous job, we're talking 8 years ago now, so
Okay,
be reasonable. But I had a company car, and it had ABS. I didn't know it had ABS
yeah,
until one day I hit a wet drain cover on a roundabout and just managed to lock one wheel
yeah,
for that, as long as
yeah,
it took to get across
yeah,
that manhole cover, and I thought, what the hell's going on here? I
yeah.
didn't even know it had
Well,
ABS.
yeah, I mean, my beam has got this traction control, and again, I actually it's only cut in the once when I deliberately provoked a slide to see how quick it was, and it was quicker than me. So I'm not against them. I'm
Yeah,
not against these devices, but ultimately, if the training and the advice isn't there, and again, my big bee in the bonnet is eyesight requirements. We're making all these laws to sort of control drivers and control and stop crashes, etc. We've got eyesight laws that go back to the 1930s, where you just have to read a number plate. It doesn't measure your peripheral vision. You can go blind on the day of your test and not tell anyone. If you don't tell anyone, there you are driving with one eye and short-sighted in that for the rest of your life until you kill someone or hit something.
yeah.
That to me is not, that is not wise law. What we were saying earlier, every law not based on wisdom is a menace to the state. So
Excellent.
yeah, speeding. Yeah, I do think I made a couple of notes before we started about that. Yeah, right speed to right circumstances. But this adding of driver assistance, I still maintain that de-skills the driver, and of course what we did discover, which links to crime, the worst offenders. When we had a big motorcycle section in Hampshire, which we called Sector 6. It was like this sort of, we're on Sector 6. It's like a James Bond sort of stuff. They targeted the worst offenders. And gosh, you know what we found? The worst offenders, the worst speeders also didn't bother with insurance, didn't check their tyres, and guess what? They were involved in other forms of criminality as well. So our Sector 6 motorcycle patrols were actually pulling in burglars, and people who you would not want living in your community because of their criminality. And they were doing it by targeting the worst driving offenders. Now, some people
Yeah.
aren't criminals but drive badly. My point is, a large percentage of people who don't give a rat's about speed limits don't give a rat's about other things as well. I did talking about penalties. I just a friend of mine is a barrister, and I was talking to him about the outrageous speeding that I think I sent you something about the freedom of information that some of these speeders, the highest speed recorded in a 30-mile-an-hour limit was in South Yorkshire, and he was clocked at 130 miles an hour. And I mentioned this to the barrister guy, and I said, well, what do you do with those people? You know, you can't in prison. He said, just take their license away forever. Just,
Yes.
end of. If they know that the penalty is you're never going to have a driving license ever again, you are Mister on a pedal cycle or public transport. Forget it. That doesn't take up any space in prisons or anything like that. You've got to hit them where it really hurts them. If it's mobility,
Yes.
stop them from being so mobile.
Yeah.
These are alternatives to sort of prison.
Yeah, I suppose the big problem there, of course, is the fact that it doesn't generate any revenue, does it?
No,
By sticking a camera at the side of the road and nicking everybody who's doing 1 mile an hour over, that's a nice earner.
oh yeah,
But stopping the real criminal that's doing 130, and then taking his license off so he can never do it again.
yeah.
That's sort of like that's not a what do they call it? Residual income.
No, it's highway robbery, isn't it? It's stand and deliver. I shouldn't say that really, because my cousin did a family tree, and when we go back sufficiently far, we found that there's a certain person in my family tree from Epping called Richard Turpin. the Richard
Really?
Turpin. He's turning in his grave, isn't he?
I always thought you were a little bit dodgy.